So yesterday we started to talk about user stories and acceptance criteria. And we saw the structure of a user story. And we came to understand that our user story will have three parts. A part telling us the stakeholder's perspective that we're writing the story from, or that we're viewing the requirement from, and what the stakeholder would like to accomplish and the benefit of what the stakeholder would like to accomplish. So the benefit of the requirement. And we saw several examples, and indeed we did some exercises. So I gave you an assignment. Have you done it? Did you try your hands on the assignment?
I've not looked at it, but I'll do it today. I will send it. I'm very sorry.
Yes. So, okay.
Running around. This is
No problem. Then maybe, can you try it now? Let's try it now.
Okay. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. So try it now. Give it a go.
Okay.
And the filter should allow the user to set a minimum and maximum price range, and it should only show products that fall within the selected price range. And yeah, that's what I have.
Okay, Mr. Andrew, what about you? Your acceptance criteria?
I think it's similar. The first one I wrote is the search result. The search results should include a filter option to select price. Then the price range filter option should allow for to set maximum and minimum price for the product. And after the price has been selected, the system should update. And if there's no product within that range, we should get a feedback, like a message to say there's no product within that range. So those are the four things I wrote.
Okay, good. Winifred, what did you get? Welcome. Hello, Winifred, did you get a chance to do the assignment?
I didn't get the chance.
No problem. You can do it now. We waited for Mr. Andrew. We can wait for you. So the question is in the chat. So look at it. Even the solution is in the chat, but you can think through the acceptance criteria.
Okay, sir. Yes.
Or at least, Mr. Andrew, you can explain some of it to her. I want all of us to be on the same page before we move to the next level.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
So take a look at the acceptance criteria I posted. Is there anyone there that you did not add to yours, that you forgot to add?
The last part that says I should be able to clear the price filter by selecting the clear option.
Is that a valid acceptance criteria?
I think yes.
Okay. So are we getting to understand how to think of the acceptance criteria now? You're essentially mentioning the way the thing should work, right? And you have to describe everything you want the developer to implement. Anything you forget, the developer has a right to also forget and not do. So you have to do your research, see examples, and think extensively. There's almost nothing you want to do that is not already out there. You just have to look at how it works and make yours follow the same example. So this is the analysis in the work, analyzing the possible ways the system should work. In some cases, it's straightforward. You may be able to get these requirements from the stakeholder. But the thing with agile environments where you are not the one eliciting the requirements directly, where you are working with a product owner, is you have to get most of your requirements from the product owner. And sometimes the product owner themselves may not have, they may forget to tell you some things. And we looked at that earlier in the course where I mentioned to you that because of the way our minds work, sometimes we may just forget to mention some parts of something. So you as the BA in an agile environment, even though we say the agile environment is maybe somewhat easier, that is, the demand of the agile environment is different than your waterfall, documentation, plan-driven environment. You still need to do your own part of the work, which is sometimes you need to do research to figure out what to even ask the product owner in case the product owner is forgetting to tell you some things. If not, you have a case where your developers are coming back to you to say, you told us to do this. What about this? What will happen here? When we do this, what if this is wrong? What will happen? You see in this acceptance criteria in some spaces, we put if there is no product, right? So you don't want to wait till your developer comes to you to say, what if there are no products? What should the stuff do? So you are the one holding up development. We can't continue to develop because we are waiting for an answer from you. And then you will go back to the product owner and say, it's true. Product owner, what if there are no products? So you should have done some research to know the different aspects of whatever product it is they want you to develop. So Google is your best friend, right? Or if you have somebody that is a senior BA that you can ask, right? So that has done something in that space, they may be able to say, oh, these were the features or these were the different aspects of this particular feature or product that we looked at when we were developing ours. So from that list or from that example, you can figure out the questions you should be asking the product owner. Okay. But we are doing very well, at least if there are 3 acceptance criteria here, most of us got 2, right? Most of us got 3 out of 4, which is good. Okay, so, and in many cases, your product owner will already tell you the acceptance criteria, right? When they are talking, you'll be asking questions. Oh, so what we want is, we want a search feature. We want the user to be able to search, blah, blah, blah. You ask questions. So how should that work? Right? When the user clicks, what should happen? You would ask questions from the product owner. And from there, you'll be getting your acceptance criteria. Right? So should the user be logged in before they can search? Right? So from the questions you're asking the product owner, because the product owner will now be representing your business stakeholders. That's their job, to represent business. So they are the ones you would ask questions. And as you ask them questions, you'll be able to figure out what should be in the acceptance criteria. Or sometimes you go and do your research a little first using Google to even know, the different parts of the product and the kinds of questions to ask. So we're doing well. Now let's talk about this whole story of user story and why we're writing user stories in this style and what other styles exist. So this approach to writing requirements, right, that we're calling user story, is from a concept called behavioral driven development, BDD. behavioral driven development. BDD. So the notion of behavioral driven development is to encourage collaboration and communication between developers, business stakeholders, and testers, your quality assurance team. So it's an approach to software development that ensures that the requirements are understandable by stakeholders, right? Your developer can understand requirements. Your stakeholders themselves that may not have any technical chops, any technical skill, can understand the requirements you have written, right? And very importantly, the testers can test the requirements. Remember when we talked about our user story, we reminded you that in the agile environment, your user story must follow invest. And one of the principles of invest is testability. Another one is that your requirement is small. Another one is estimable. Another one is valuable, negotiable, independent. So all these things, all these good things we want, we want our requirement to be independent. We want our requirement to be negotiable, to be valuable, to be testable, to be small. To bring that to life, this approach called BDD came about. So we could talk about this forever. Laura, you have a question? So we can, Laura, do you have a question? Okay. So we can talk about these good quality, these good, great things we want, right, for our requirement, but without a structure for them to manifest, then people will be doing whatever they want, and it will be difficult for BAs to create requirements that meet this standard. And that's where the BDD came from. The idea behind BDD is to enable communication and collaboration between developers, business stakeholders, and your testers, to write your user story in a way that all these stakeholders can understand and that your testers can test the requirements. Okay, so your user story or your requirement when written in BDD format, right? When you are following BDD, behavioral driven development, you are able to represent the behavior of the system. You're essentially thinking about how the system should behave. You see all those things we do with use cases where we are talking about the flow, right? You remember when we did use cases and we looked at use case narratives and we're saying, okay, when the person does this, the system should do this. When the system does this, the person should do this. Right? That narrative we did. Now you are trying to capture that without all the use cases, use case modeling, and all the form filling, right? You're trying to capture that essence. And that's what BDD is about. Now, you want to represent how the system should behave in a way that every stakeholder can understand what you're writing. That's why we are calling it a story. It tells a story of the stakeholder and what they want to do and why. Every stakeholder can see the value, right, of the story or of the feature. And most importantly, the feature or the story can be tested by quality assurance. So unlike previous requirement style that we used to write in waterfall approach, where no one knows or no one really cares how QA handles it in terms of we are not considering QA when writing requirements. With Agile, we are considering the QA, quality assurance people, that is our testers. We are considering them. So we want to write a story that when the developers finish developing the increment and they present it, the tester can look at our story and look at, that is our story. And when I'm saying story here, I mean story and acceptance criteria. So they can look at our story, look at the criteria for accepting it, and look at the increment, and they'll be able to test it. They'll be able to test to see whether that increment has actually implemented our story and all the things we stated in our acceptance criteria. So there is a language used for BDD, for behavioral driven development. We have seen the user story part of it. Now we want to talk about how to write our acceptance criteria using BDD format. That language is called the Gherkin approach or Gherkin code. So you can use Gherkin to write your acceptance criteria. You see, Gherkin is also, some people also call it giving, when, then. Giving, when, then, or GWT approach to writing acceptance criteria. So what the Gherkin approach means for acceptance criteria is that you write your acceptance criteria and you break your acceptance criteria using this giving, when, then syntax or GWT format. So you write given that this. So you talk about the preconditions. If you remember user case, use case narratives, the form, right? There's a part for preconditions, and we talked about what that means, which is the state the system must be in for us, for the use case to start, right? So for that user story to start, what state should the system be in? That's what you put in your giving. So given that the user has logged in to the shopping platform, right? So whatever condition the user must have completed in order to carry out what they want to do, you put that in the giving. So what they want to do, or what the user will do, the user's action, you put it in the when. So when the user does this, then the user should see this result. So then the system maybe should reply this way, right? So that's the Gherkin format or GWT, giving, when, then. So let's look at an example. So let me use this user story. As a customer, I want to view my order history so that I can keep track of my past purchases. So this is the user story, right? As a customer, I want to view my order history so I can keep track of my past purchases. So if I want to write the acceptance criteria for this user story using the Gherkin format, Gherkin or GWT or given, when, then, and this is how I'd write it. I'll start with the preconditions. So what this story is about is that the customer should be able to view order history so that they can see their past purchases. What does the customer need to do to be able to view order history? So let's look at preconditions. Number one, you won't number it like this. I'm just using this to show you. Right. So you have written your user story, the acceptance criteria. You say, given what state should the customer be in order to see order history? Anyone?
Like have you signing or giving?
Okay. Given, exactly. So given that the customer is logged in, or you can say, given that I am logging, since we are continuing with this I, right? We can continue the acceptance criteria from the customer's perspective. Given that I am logged in to my account. So that's the giving part. So the giving will cover what state or what the customer must do first, what should have been done before this particular requirement can happen. I want to view order history, right? That's the main thing. The customer wants to view order history. So before this action, what the customer wants can happen. What state should the system be in? So the customer must have logged in. So we have done the giving part. Given that I am logged into my account, then the next part is when. That's why it's called giving when then. So what action should the customer take? When the customer does something, right? Then something else should happen. So what is the when in this case? Anyone? Given that I am logged into my account, when so, so like I said, that was a good attempt. But you want to talk about what the customer would do, right? Not what they want to do anymore. We have talked about what they want to do here. Now we have to say what they will do. So let me just complete this example. Given that I'm logged into my account, when I can say when I go to the order history page, you may write when I click on order history link, right? So depending on what you are designing and how it's structured. Right. So when I go to the order history page or when I navigate to the order history page, right? Can you all see what I'm writing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when I navigate to the order history page, then, so you see why it's called giving when then. Giving when I do something, then what should happen? Then I should see, this is the result I want, right? I want to view my order history. So I should see a list of all my previous orders given when then. Now, say this is not descriptive enough for the developer, obviously, because it's just saying show a list of all my previous orders. There may be more things that I want the developer should include in this feature that is creating, right? This order history page. So I will now add that with and. For example, I want each order to include an order date. So I'll say each order should include a date. Let me change it to include the order date, comma, item purchased, comma, total amount, and shipping information. So, do we get it now? So, given will contain is a statement showing the preconditions, what must be in existence or how the system must be for the requirement to take place. So in this case, this person must have logged in for this requirement, which is view order history to take place. Then when we'll say what the person would do when the person does this action. So when he's describing the action the person must take, then is the result, right? When the person performs this action, then this result will happen. Is that clear? Any question? Laura, any question?
No, sir.
Okay.
Prof, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So why will someone write user story in this form, this Gherkin form?
Okay, Gherkin format. So
Mm.
now, very good question. The reason why you write your user story in Gherkin format, let me rewind and say that not all organizations will require you or expect you to write user stories in Gherkin format, right? This is sort of,
Okay.
yeah, another level. For some organization, it may be entirely different from how they do things. And for some organization, this is what they will expect. So why Gherkin format? It's because the QA people, the testers, they have softwares that can test the codes programmers have written. And those softwares can understand this Gherkin format. That means if you write your story in Gherkin format in that kind of environment where your QA has softwares that can test Gherkin, they can take your story and use it to test what the developer has written. So you see, it makes you a major advantage to them in the organization and to that kind of environment. You can take your story as it is with the acceptance criteria, just the acceptance criteria, and use it to test. And so there are softwares that understand Gherkin.
Okay. I think
Gherkin syntax. Any other question? Please feel free to ask questions about that. There's no... Let me see if I can remember some of the software. So I know, for example, Cucumber is the name of one software that QA people use to test code. And Cucumber understands is based on BDD format and Gherkin. Right? So they can take your exact acceptance criteria. You just wrote it easily and freely. They can take that and use it to test the code, which is very good. So for those kinds of environments, the other one is, I think SpecFlow, for example, is another software QA is used that can understand Gherkin and is based on BDD. So in those kind of environments, they will cherish you. If you are applying for a job and you put, I can write user stories in Gherkin format, right? If that company is looking for that kind of quality in a BA, then you're a major asset because it's not all BAs that can write it. In fact, many BAs cannot at all. They just write their acceptance criteria straight as 1, 2, 3. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it just means that your QA people will now have to take if they are using softwares that use Gherkin, they will now have to take the 1, 2, 3 and convert it to a Gherkin syntax or convert it to something else that they can use to test. Okay. Any questions about that? Any question? Okay, so let's look at this user story while we're thinking. As a user, I want to be able to create a new account so that I can access the website. So let's assume Madam Laura created a website for her business and she wants to create a feature where users can access the website, maybe a particular feature of the website, right? A particular page in the website. So you want users to be able to create an account in order to access that website. Maybe she's selling a product and she wants them to create an account. So this is the story as a user. So we're writing from the user's perspective, what the user will want to do, right? As a user, I want to be able to, I don't like this, be able to. So I want to create a new account so that I can access the website. right? I want to create a new account so I can access the website. So the user has told you what he wants to do. Now let's think. This is a simple user story. Now let's think and see how we can apply the Gherkin format. Now, some of you have already thought of the solution. Some of us are already thinking. So please type it and post it in the chat. Let me quickly add something. The key syntax of Gherkin is given, when, then. But you see, and is a bonus. We all know in English language, as they taught us in elementary school, and is conjunction. So sometimes maybe you want more than one precondition, so you can use and to join them together. So given that the user has paid this amount and the user has done this, so you can use and to join any part of your giving or any part of your when or any part of your then together. So for when, it may be when the user does this and this, right? In case there are two things you want the user to do first, or when the user does this and this and this. I think I'll see if I can pull some of the stories we have written, or some of the stories Dollar wrote for a job. You see levels of and, you see and this and this and this. So you can use and to pile on things if you need to, okay, for any part of the giving, when, then. But the key thing is you have to have giving this precondition, when the user does this. So this part you should know is for action, user action or stakeholder action, the user you are writing about. But this is precondition. So what must have happened? Then, so this part is for the result. So given that the user has done this and that and that and that and that, when the user does this and this and this and this, then this and this and this and this and this should happen. Given that the gentleman has paid the dowry in full and complete, when the gentleman arrives with his family to take the bride, then Wale, complete it. Then
Which user story are you getting that from?
it's a user story that happened to most of us, right? I'm sure it happened to you too. So then what should happen?
Then I'll carry my wife.
Straight, no questions asked, except you want riot. Or Laura, am I wrong?
No, sir.
So who has finished?
I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Because I'm not hearing anything anymore.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, no, I just
Okay.
heard you.
Okay. So I was saying, anyone else? So Wale, I responded to your story. I said it makes sense.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear before.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Andrew, what's going on?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, what's going on? Have you done it? Laura, Winifred. Winifred is not here anymore. We're waiting for someone else to try out the answer. Has anyone else done it?
I think I stepped out a bit. I stepped out, so I did not get the question.
Oh, okay. Let's see. The question. So this was the question. As a user, I want to create a new account so I can access the website.
Use this format here, giving automatically.
Yes, the Gherkin format, given when then.
Okay.
Laura, any movement?
Yeah, I saw Oga Andrew speaking from the screen, but I was not hearing anything. But I'm hearing, I just heard you now.
Okay, I was saying we're waiting for you to do the task.
You know, I just got in, so I'm still trying to settle into the
Okay,
Jekyll. That's why.
okay,
Proof. Let me try.
yes.
So I would say, given the user is on the website homepage,
Mm-hmm.
when the user click on the create button,
Mm-hmm.
then the user is taken to the account creation page. Is that correct?
Given the user is on the home page, when the user clicks, please, can you type it into the chat?
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if that is correct.
No, it looks correct, but type it into the chat. Okay. 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 So I've seen some of the Gherkin syntax, the acceptance criteria we wrote using Gherkin. Now, I want us to look at what we have written. Okay, then you can have access. I want us to look at what we have written. Now, think of a registration system, right? We talked about, okay, Laura's business. Maybe she owns a company that offers some kind of online service. and a customer wants to register so that they can access that service. So using Gherkin format, you have written, given that I am on the website sign up page, when I enter my information and click sign up, then I should be able to access the website with my new account. And that's correct. But is that everything? So these are some of the things I want you to consider. Given the customer is on the sign on page, when the customer enters and submits valid information. Because you need to be asking yourself, is it possible for the customer to go to the registration page and just submit nonsense? Yes. So when I enter my information and click sign up, should the system be checking anything to make sure the information is correct? So putting the word valid there signals to the developer that they should check that the information is correct. So where you say enter email, what if the person just enters nonsense? Right? Where you say enter name, what if the person, or phone number, what if the person just enters 123? Is your system doing anything? So those are some of the things you want to consider, because what you write is what developer would do. So when the customer enters and submits valid information, then the person should be allowed to access the website. So then a new account should be created and the customer should have access to the system. So the key thing here is you want the information being entered to be checked. And so this will automatically give birth to another case, another scenario. Another scenario. Let me see, we still have time so I can talk about this. Now, this is our user story and our acceptance criteria for this particular case, where a user wants to create an account so that they can access our website. When writing user stories, if you want to be extremely formal and extremely technical, your user stories, you should use the word, instead of should, you should always use the legal term shall. If you want to be formal and extremely on point, like you know, depending on your environment, if they are extremely serious and all that, then you can use the legal term shall. An account shall be created. Right? So when the user, as long as these conditions are met and the user takes these actions, then these things will result. Same for requirements. When you are writing requirements, ideally you use the legal word shall instead of should or will. Another thing with Gherkin or behavioral driven development is, now because we have written valid here, you now have to write a separate acceptance criteria. So what that means is you are now creating scenarios. Scenarios is, okay, like you flows, alternate flows in our use cases, right? So this becomes scenario one, because we now automatically have another scenario, a scenario where the user enters invalid information. You have to tell the developer how to undo invalid information, because I've used the word valid here, saying that I should check the information, right? When the customer enters and submits valid information, so that means the developer has to check that the information is valid. So that means this cannot be the end of the story. So what happens, you have to, when the customer enters invalid information, you have to now create a scenario for that. So scenario one, customer enters valid info. You have to now create a separate scenario, scenario two, where the customer does not enter valid info. So let's write it here. Scenario two, customer enters invalid info. Then you repeat the same thing. Given that the customer is on the sign-on page, that precondition is the same. The only difference is that the customer is entering and submitting invalid information. So you say when, so you write the given, you write what we wrote in given. Given customer is on sign-on page. When customer enters invalid information on the registration page, right? Then what should happen? Then the system should show an error message saying invalid information entered. Again, you can change the should to shall. Then the system shall show an error message saying invalid information entered. Show an error message to the user. Right, so this becomes a second scenario. So in your user story, you have or the user story you're submitting, the requirement you're submitting, you have user story on top, right? The user story as a user, then you have scenario one, and you say what the scenario is about. Scenario two, and you say what that scenario is about, so that developers can test. Okay, when the customer enters valid information, okay, this is what should happen. When the customer enters wrong information, this is what should happen. And so they'll test all those scenarios to see that the testers would test all those scenarios to see that what the developer has developed actually conforms to the user story and acceptance criteria you wrote. And you will see that this way of writing user story and acceptance criteria is essentially telling us how the system should behave. So when you hear QAs say something like, please, this Mr. BA or Ms. BA, please tell us how this system should behave. Please describe the behavior of this product. So it's on you to, what they mean is write the user story and the acceptance criteria that they can use to test and see if the developer actually developed the system to behave that way. Right. So given that the customer is on the sign-on page, when the customer enters valid information, the system should behave this way. It should allow the customer access the system. When the customer does not enter valid information, the system should behave this other way. Right. So, and you write them as two different acceptance criteria. So two different scenarios. In some cases, you may have multiple scenarios. And so it's on you to be thinking through this thing with the product owner. You are working with the product owner. Think, okay, how will this now, because the product owner have collected the requirements, that's why you are working with the product owner to think through how will this thing work. Okay, if this happens, then this should happen as a result. And what if the customer does this, then this should happen as a result. So you're thinking through all the different use cases or scenarios, right? All the different flows. Now, you may be the product owner, which means you should have talked to the stakeholders, your business stakeholders, to understand these different scenarios so that you can communicate it to the development team as your user story and acceptance criteria. Okay, let me give you some more to try. So let's look at the stories we wrote yesterday. The one about other status. So I'm just going to post the story here. Let me see if where I typed it. Yeah, I have it. So I'll post the story here, and I want us to try the Gherkin method this time. Just even see if you can figure out the scenarios. Let's start from there. So I posted the story. So let's see if we can figure out these scenarios. Anyone? So that's one of the stories we did yesterday. Is this another story?
Let me give it a shot.
Yeah, sure.
Given that I am logged into my account
Okay.
on the website, when I navigate to my order page. So when I click my order page, the history, then I should be able to view the status of my order.
Okay. That's good. Anyone else? And please start thinking about the scenarios that can come up from there. Anyone else? You can pick any of these user stories. So we did this one today. Mr. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, so I'm here. Yeah.
I notice you're very quiet. So
I think I missed something, so I'm trying to connect the other things. I'll take one. I'll do one now. Just a minute.
okay.
Can I try the second one?
Yes, sure.
Let me try the second. Let me try. Let me try the second.
Yeah, Mr. Okay, Mr. Andrew, go ahead. Wale, please hold on.
Please just allow me. Yeah. So the second one is, given that I am signed into the website and I navigate to the shopping cart,
Okay.
then I cannot purchase. Then I cannot purchase item. I mean, yeah, purchase. I can purchase item maybe later.
You didn't use when. Your user story must have given when and then.
Okay. Okay. Given when I'm logged in.
No, not giving when.
Okay. So okay.
So
Okay. Well, then just try. Yeah. Let me
no.
just.
Don't worry. Just wait. So you have to have something that will happen, right? Your precondition or something that has happened. So given that the user has done something in the past, right?
Yeah.
So the user has done something, or the user, for example, like you said, the user is on the website and on the product page, right?
Yeah.
Fine, that's your given. Then you have to talk about what the user has to do now, the action the user has to take. That's what will be in your when. So when the user takes that action, that's when you can talk about the result. So you can't jump up from where the what the user did in the past, and you say, so the user is on the product page. The user did not do anything, but the user can add products to shopping cart.
Yeah.
Right, so you have to have This is what the user must have done. When the user does this, then this should result. So if you want to add a product to shopping cart, what would you do?
Okay, so let me just take it one again.
No, just even
So-
use plain English. If you want to add a product on Amazon, what would you do?
So I will log in. After
Okay.
I've logged in,
So given that you are
then,
logged in,
yeah, I would select what I want to add to the cart.
So that's an action you are taking, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I select what I want to add to the cart. Okay.
Then I can proceed to pay or pay later.
Okay.
So that will be the result.
So when you select the things you want to add into the cart, what should happen to those things?
Then I can proceed to payment, or it will be added to the cart.
It should be added to the cart. Remember, is sort of back and forth between you and the system.
Yeah.
So when you do something, what should the system do? Or what should happen as a result? So like you
if
said,
I select something,
and you click add to the cart, what should happen?
yeah. So it will be added to the cart.
Exactly. Then the product you have selected should be added to the cart, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can add more things with and. Maybe you want to add more detail.
Okay.
The product should be added to the cart, and the amount of the cost of everything should be updated, and the number of products in the cart should be updated, right? So you can add all those things, yes. But you are getting the flow. Given that you have done something already, when you take an action, right, concerning the requirement or the feature you want, when you take this action, then this should result.
Yeah.
So Wale, you wanted to try?
Yeah, I think you pretty much say what I wanted, but I will just say what I had in mind. Given that I am logged into my account, I'm browsing products on the website. When I select a product and click add to cart, then the product should be added to my shopping cart for later purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So are there different scenarios in this user story?
Sorry?
How many scenarios do you have in this user story? Do you think there are different scenarios?
I think they're the same. No. The given, there are two scenarios there. So given that I'm logged onto my account and browsing products on the website. So those are two different scenarios. Then for the when, so when I select products and click add to cart on that product, then the product should be added to shopping cart. So I don't know if those and the connections, if that makes it two different scenarios.
Okay.
Or not.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So using and doesn't make it two different scenarios. You can have plenty and. I'll show an example here. So if you look at your screen, you see scenario 1, given the account is creditworthy and the card is valid and the dispenser contains cash. When the customer requests the cash, then ensure the account is debited and ensure cash is dispensed and ensure the card is returned, which is a use case for ATM withdraw cash, right? So you can have as many and as possible. It doesn't mean two scenarios. I'm just saying this particular use case, if you want to be thorough, warrants two scenarios.
Yeah.
And you will see it from what Mr. Andrew was saying. He was saying, then later I can view my card to pay. that actually is another scenario. Right. So one scenario is adding the product to cart. Given that I'm on the product page, when I click add to cart, then the product should be added to my shopping cart. That's one scenario. Then the second scenario is, what if I want to view the product on my shopping cart and pay? So it's still, given that I have added products to my shopping cart, right? Since I've already added them. So that's my precondition now. That before, if I want to view product and pay, I must have added them. So given that I've added product to my shopping cart, when I click on the shopping cart icon, or what's it called, the shopping cart icon, then I should see the list of products in my shopping cart and the total price of the items in my shopping cart, and I should be able to proceed to checkout. I should be able to pay, right? So from this one story, there are two parts. Number one is you want the user to be able to add product to their shopping cart. And the second part is you want the user to be able to view the products they have added to their shopping cart and pay.
Sorry, sir. I wanted to ask, it's also possible that you dump things on your shopping cart and maybe for later review, uh, you could have two different products, but you want to choose one from them and they are all in your cart. So the return part.
So the deleting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you can create that as another scenario. Okay, given that I've added product to my shopping cart, when I click on the shopping cart, I should see the list of the products and I should be able to remove products from my shopping cart. So that may be another scenario. Right? Or I could also write it like this. I could say, given that, so, and I'm giving you this example so you know at the end of the day, what you want to do is be able to communicate what should happen to the developer. There's no exactly one way. The way you word your things may be slightly different from the way I word it mine. But when I read your acceptance criteria and I read mine, I should be able to get the same message at the end of the day. And you should use Gherkin syntax. So it's given, when, then. You shouldn't go and use given, won't, then, or given, what's up, then, right? It has to follow the Gherkin syntax. So let me see if I wanted to word the last one another way. I could say, given that I have products in my shopping cart, when in this case now, we're assuming that there's a delete button, right? But this will signal to the developer, if there's none, that there should be. So given that I have products listed in my shopping cart, when I click on a particular product and select delete product, then the product should be deleted from my shopping cart. See, I'm writing this acceptance criteria exactly as I'm thinking about it. But what I'm saying, right, is now the way the developer will implement it. I'll say, okay, I have product in my shopping cart, right, but the action I really want to take now is delete product, and in fact, is that not a different user story though? As a user, I want to be able to delete product in my shopping cart when I don't want them anymore, so that I can pay for only what I want. That's a different user story. So I would make that a different user story, Laura, and then I'll write the acceptance criteria as given that I am in the shopping cart. When I see a list of products and I select a product and I click the delete button next to the product, if it's a button I want, right, then the product should be deleted. But with every word I'm using, I'm telling the developer how I want the thing to be designed. Now, my idea of how I want the system to be designed is in my head, right? The picture I have is in my head. And that's why BAs will work closely with product designers. Or in some cases, the BA themselves should be able to design user interfaces or wireframes or mockups. So as you are writing the story, you support it with a picture of how you want it to look so that the developer knows exactly what you are saying. Right? So if you, for example, as you can see my screen, if I want the delete button to be here and I want it to be like X, I can now create a picture like this. What I'm doing now is what you call a wireframe, right? Something I can sketch myself. So I can sketch something like this and put these buttons here and say, maybe these are products now. Let's assume these are products. All you are seeing here are product one, product two, product. And these are the types of the list of the items that I've added to my shopping cart, right? I can now say, so developer, this is what I want. I've written the user story, which is explaining it and the acceptance criteria. I can now support it with a picture like this. So this will be a wireframe, something you can just draw, either using tools like Lucy Chart, suspect Lucy Chart can do that, or Miro, we'll see Miro doing it. Laura said her screen is blank. Can you see your screen? Can anyone else see their screen?
Yes, I can.
I
I can see my screen.
Okay, so Laura, I think the issue is from your end. It's not from here. So the two times you have said your screen is blank, everybody else can see their screen. Okay, so, okay. Okay, so this will be a mock-up. So a mock-up is something you can either sketch yourself using, if you have a drawing tool, like if you have, using pencil and paper, or you use, a wireframe. I'm saying mock-up. A wireframe is something you can sketch like. So this would be a wireframe. And we'll look into that next. So some of the things we'll be doing next week will be, okay, how do you create a mock-up, right? Not a wireframe. A wireframe, we will see maybe Lucy Chart or Miro to create wireframes. But mock-ups would use Balsamic. I will show you how to go about it, right? So how do you create a mock-up to support the story you are sending to developers? Now, again, many organizations would have a product designer, someone who is responsible just for creating mock-ups and designing their system, essentially dictating how the system should look, right? The color, the branding, those kind of things, right? For the company's system, if it's a web-based system, even if it's a desktop Windows-based system, there will be somebody responsible for what colors, how the buttons should look, where things should be placed and arranged. And that person will be supporting you. So you'll be working closely with that person. When you are writing a story that involves something that people should click on or see, something that the customer should see, right? That involves an interface, that person will support you by creating mock-ups. Creating mock-ups, right? That you can send to the developer. So you send your user story and that mock-up or set of mock-ups to the developer so the developer can see and know what you have in mind. Okay. Any question? So most of us did not attempt number 3. So again, please take number 3, write the Gherkin syntax for the acceptance criteria. Try it out. If you do get if you get a job that is in an agile environment, many times this is what you'll be doing, writing user stories and acceptance criteria. So imagine every other thing we have talked about in this course, you may not need to do except asking questions and writing user story. So if this is the one thing you will be doing, then you should at least be above average in your ability to do it. So that's why I'm saying practice this thing. So try them out. In the next class, like we did today, you would show me what you have done. So don't be surprised when we start the class and I say, show me what you have done or describe what you have done so we can see where you are at. So try these things out. Practice would improve your ability to do it, right? So just practicing it, knowing that the syntax is given when then. When you think through it some more, you will see that it's actually not difficult. It is simple, right? But you need to think through it. Just look at that. This is the way you would actually describe how the system will behave when you are using normal English language. The reason why it's restricted to given when then is because with these 3 syntax, the computer can know to check for this syntax, so to check for given and see all the things on that given, check for when and see what you have written on that when, then check for then and see all the things you have written when, on that then. So it will take what you wrote in when and execute it in the program to see if the result is the same as what you wrote in then. So, but as a human being, you would normally describe it as, okay, like when I asked you, how do you do something on Amazon? How do you add something to the cart? You say, well, when I go to Amazon, that is giving that I'm on Amazon. I'll click on the product and then add to cart, you see? So you are now saying the actions you will take. When I go to Amazon, that's your giving, right? So you are now stating your actions. When I click on the product and I click add to cart, then the system will add them to the cart and update the total cost and update the number of products in the cart. And that's your then. So it's the same way we would normally describe stuff. It's just, it's more structured. Because again, it's part of your requirement, right? So it has to be structured. Okay. You could as well write this same thing as, okay, step 1 or number 1. I go to Amazon website. Number 2, I click on shopping this thing. Number 3, I click on the product. Number 4, I click add to cart. Number 5. You can write out the steps if that's what you are comfortable with, right? What are the steps you take to do this action? You can write out those steps. And from the steps, if you want, you can now change it to given when then, if that's what your organization needs. Some organizations, even very high-tech organizations, are comfortable with just write out the steps. That's what the developers want. Just write out the steps for us as 1, 2, 3, and we'll do it. Right? But you should be able to move between the two. So if you are comfortable with first stating the step, then state the steps. Then now move from there. So you're given when then. Okay? Any questions?
No.
Okay. Laura, any question?
No, sir.
Okay. I wanted us to talk about job. So, but for tonight, this is where we'll stop our Agile discussion.